two people. Same road in Finland, same speed, same oops, I was just keeping up with traffic. And they don't pay the same ticket, not even close. Because in Finland, once speeding gets serious enough, the fine can scale with your income. So the penalty isn't just how fast were you going, it's also how much would this actually hurt you. And before anyone panics, no, Finland isn't income checking you for going 5 over. There's a very clear switch point where the system changes gears. And that detail is exactly what most Americans don't know. Today, I'll break down how it works in real life, where the fixed fee tickets end, where the income-based fines begin, and why Finland basically treats fines like deterrents, not price tags. And stay with me because I'm also going to kill the biggest myth people repeat online, that this is some get out of trouble if you're broke system. It's not. All right, let's talk about Finland's day fine system. Why explained in normal human language. First, a quick American baseline. In the US, most tickets feel like a menu price. You break a rule, the state hands you a number, and whether you're a broke college student or a millionaire, it's usually the same number. So what happens? For some people, that number is a disaster. For others, it's a rounding error. And that's the core thing Finland is trying to avoid, especially for more serious traffic offenses. Finland's approach is basically, the goal isn't that everyone pays the same dollars. The goal is that everyone feels the consequence. Equal impact, not equal price. Now here's the most important thing to understand up front, because this is where Americans get misled by viral headlines. Finland does not make every traffic penalty income-based. There are fixed fee penalties for petty traffic violations, and then there are income-based fines for more serious cases. So let's separate the two worlds. World number 1, the fixed fee zone. For minor traffic offenses, Finland uses something called a traffic penalty fee. It's an administrative penalty with set amounts. In plain terms, it's a chart. And if you're caught through automatic traffic surveillance, like speed cameras, there are fixed fees based on how much you exceeded the limit and the kind of speed zone you were in. This is where you'll see fees like 70 euros, 100 euros, 140 euros, 170 euros, and 200 euros, depending on the situation. So yes, Finland absolutely has normal tickets that look a lot like what Americans expect. You do the thing, the amount is basically predefined. But then we hit world number 2, the day fine zone. This is the part that makes Americans say, wait, that's legal? Finland's police explain that traffic crimes punishable with day fines include exceeding the speed limit by more than 20 kilometers per hour. That's the switch. A more than 20 kilometers per hour over, and now you're not in petty fee territory anymore. Now you're in this is serious territory, and income can become part of the fine calculation. Quick conversion for Americans. 20 kilometers per hour is about 12 miles per hour. So think, not I drifted over the limit. Think, I'm moving. And this is why those massive fine stories exist. They're not built around tiny mistakes. They're built around bigger violations where Finland intentionally turns the penalty into something you can't just shrug off. Now let's make this feel real with a quick mini story. Imagine an American visiting Finland, renting a car and driving like they do back home. They're on a road where the speed limit feels slow compared to what they're used to. The road is wide, visibility is good, and the brain goes, okay, 10 or 15 over is normal. But in Finland, there's a line you really don't want to cross, because if you cross into that more than 20 kilometers per hour over zone, the consequences can stop being a predictable fee and start being a calculation. And that's the mindset difference. In the US, speeding penalties often feel like a nuisance. In Finland, for serious speeding, it's treated more like, we're going to make sure you remember this. So how do day fines actually work? And this is the part that sounds like math class. but it's actually the heart of the system. Finland uses what's often called a unit fine, commonly referred to as a day fine conceptually, where the amount is tied to income. Finland's police even provide a fine counter that describes how the day fine amount is determined. Here's the simplified idea. They start with your net monthly income. They deduct a basic allowance. Think of it as a protected amount meant for basic living. Then they divide what's left by 60. That produces a unit amount. And then, the number of units depends on how serious the offense is. So instead of one flat price, it's basically, how big is this offense? Times how much does one unit hurt you? That's the design. And here's a key detail that makes this feel less like a social media rumor and more like an actual system. There's a minimum unit fine amount. The police fine counter notes the minimum unit fine is €6. So even at very low income, the system doesn't go to zero. And it also notes minimum totals for speeding in some cases, like minimums that can be €100 for moped drivers and €200 for drivers of other motor vehicles. So let's kill the myth right here. This is not a system where poor people can speed for free. It's a system where rich people can't speed, like it's a subscription. Now, the obvious American question, how do they even know your income? In the US, what if a cop asked for your income during a stop? People would assume they're filming a prank show. But in Finland's legal framework, income is part of calculating certain fines. Finland's legal information portal explains that unit fines are based on income, including a basic allowance deduction, and it describes what counts as income in that context. So this isn't treated as some random invasive question. It's treated as part of making the sanction proportional. And now here's where it gets really interesting, because the entire philosophy flips the American fine as a fee idea. Let's do a simple comparison. In the US, a $200 ticket might be, for one person, I'm eating ramen for 2 weeks. For another person, I'll Venmo that right now and forget it happened. Same behavior, totally different impact. Finland's approach is basically saying, if the impact is wildly different, the deterrent is wildly different. And if the deterrent is wildly different, the system isn't really doing what it claims to do. So instead, serious offenses get scaled, not to punish success, to prevent punishment from becoming optional. But here's where it gets weird, because once you understand the logic, you start seeing how deliberate the whole structure is. Finland doesn't need income-based penalties for everything. They keep petty stuff in the fixed-fee world. And then they reserve the income-based sting for behavior that crosses into this is a real safety issue. That's why Finland's transport authority describes traffic penalty fees as fixed and emphasizes that fines are reserved for more serious traffic offenses. So the system has layers: fixed fees for minor violations, income-based fines for serious ones, and a clearish switch that helps explain why those famous massive fine stories happen. Okay, quick reset. Because this is the moment where most people get lost. Here's the entire video in one breath. In Finland, minor speeding can trigger a fixed traffic penalty fee. But if you exceed the speed limit by more than 20 kilometers per hour, it can fall into a category of traffic crimes punishable with day fines, where the fine amount is tied to your income using a structured calculation method. That's it. Now let's talk about why Americans usually react so strongly to this. Because this topic is a personality test. Some Americans hear this and go, that's unfair. The rich pay more for the same mistake. Other Americans hear it and go, that's the only way fines are fair. Otherwise, the rich basically have a legal speed pass. Finland is clearly leaning toward that second idea, at least for serious offenses. They're not trying to create equal bills. They're trying to create equal deterrence. And whether you love it or hate it, it is absolutely a things Americans don't know moment because it's a different definition of what a fine is supposed to do. In the US, we often treat a fine like a price tag. In Finland, for serious speeding, it's closer to a behavioral stop sign. And here's one more detail people miss. Finland's police also describe fine procedures and the idea that certain fine matters must be clear and simple for the police to resolve through that process. Why? So it's not random fines. It's a system with defined procedures that tries to process clear cases efficiently while still keeping the serious penalties meaningful. Now zoom out. If you're an American watching this and thinking, okay, would this ever work in the US? The honest answer is, culturally, it would be a shock, because it requires something Americans aren't used to with fines, treating them as a proportional punishment rather than a uniform fee. But whether or not you want it here, it's a real example of a modern country designing penalties around the concept of equal impact. All right, final recap. Finland uses fixed traffic penalty fees for petty traffic offenses, but for more serious traffic crimes, including speeding more than 20 kilometers per hour over the limit, Finland can use day fines where the amount is calculated based on income, using a structured method that includes a basic allowance deduction and minimum fine rules. So the next time you see a headline about a huge Finnish speeding fine, you'll know what it actually means. Not Finland hates drivers, but Finland doesn't want fines to be optional. Now, I want your take, and I want it in one sentence. Should fines be the same number for everyone? Or should they be designed to hurt the same for everyone? Tell me in the comments which system you think is more fair. And if you want more real rules that would surprise most Americans, but are totally normal elsewhere, subscribe. Because the next episode is going to spark an even bigger debate.